Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. In this update, we've got some pretty intense heat to talk about, but a cool down coming for the Midwest and some flooding rains for portions of the Northeast. So let's take a look at the setup going forward. You can actually see these complex of thunderstorms that's blowing up off the northwest flow across portions of eastern Nebraska here, getting into Iowa. That actually is in fishtailing down east southeastward into Missouri. Yesterday, they got to get hit hard. One place in Missouri, in fact, had a 5-inch hailstone reported. That continues to dive east to southeastward into the afternoon, evening time frame, and really start to get its act together across southern portions of Illinois, into western portions of Kentucky, as well as into western portions of Tennessee. Then we have another little dip in the jet stream further north, taking advantage of all the moisture coming in off the Atlantic, and that's going to feed right back into New England today with yet more flooding rains. Unfortunately, they do have flood warnings and watches in place up there for the same areas that's been getting hit hard as of late. Upstate New York, getting into Vermont and New Hampshire, back into portions of Maine again. Those areas are going to get hit hard with an additional heavy rainfall for those regions. But further south, it's all about the heat, folks. And we've seen this relentless heat. In fact, widespread heat advisories, excessive heat warnings across 15 separate states, encompassing 80 million Americans, folks. So this is some dangerous stuff. In fact, Phoenix is day 19 in a row of 110 plus, but the widespread triple digits encompassing pretty much all the entire state of Texas, Oklahoma, getting into Louisiana, back into Arkansas. So this is some pretty intense heat going into the peak of summer. But those storm complexes are going to be pretty active as well. So that storm complex that we showed you right up front into Missouri, it's really going to get its act together and really intensify as we get into the heat of the afternoon. Originating down here in southeastern portions of Missouri, getting into western portions of Kentucky, as well as into western and central Tennessee. Definitely be on high alert. These could be some large hail producers, as well as some damaging winds, and yes, very torrential flooding rains. Also a convective complex that's going to be impacting portions of upstate New York, getting back into Vermont and New Hampshire again, compounding with the flood threat. This is also going to be a damaging wind threat, with those trees being susceptible with all the soil moisture, very, very vulnerable for, high tree damage in these regions once those winds crank over 50 miles an hour, which they are going to be doing later on this afternoon. So if we take a look at the rainfall estimates for the next 24 hours, the bullseye really sets up across portions of southern Illinois, getting into southern portions of Indiana, but especially into western Kentucky here, into central Tennessee. Those areas could get hit hard, easily 2 to 4. Some of these areas, some areas could pick up 6, even maybe 8 inches is not out of the question. So definitely they've got flood risk, and even a moderate excessive flood warning in place for these regions. And then up here into portions of the New England regions, definitely some heavier rain moving back in the picture. So definitely be on high alert as those creeks and streams are saturated up there in that region. But if you are in the market for a weather station, I definitely highly recommend the Weatherflow Tempest weather station. It's the one I've actually had for the last 3 years. Definitely highly recommend it. It's a 5-in-1 system. It's the best one on the market that I feel like. And you can be a part of the Tempest community of over 45,000 with a desktop version, as well as an app version on your phone. So it's a cool thing about it is it's literally very easy to install. Takes 10 minutes to install, and once you set it up, it's a set and forget it, folks. It really pretty much takes care of itself. So, but I do have a discount code if you are interested, a 10% off discount code and free shipping. So I'll definitely have the link in the description below, so if you'd like to order one for yourself. But like I mentioned, further south, plenty of records are going to be dropping today. So adding to those triple digits across portions of Las Vegas, getting into the Death Valley region. I think they hit 129 yesterday. some serious heat continues to crank. But the difference this time, it's expanding. So it's literally expanding from coast to coast. So no one's going to be escaping as far as if you live in the southern corridor of the US. Further to the north, it's actually fairly comfortable across portions of Montana, back into the Dakotas, up into the upper Midwest regions. Widespread 80s in those areas. So very, comfortable like air, especially for the next couple of days. But the rainfall is definitely going to be concerned. So especially it's a 2-day event across portions of central Kentucky as well as into central Tennessee. Those areas are definitely going to be on high alert for major flash flooding over the next couple of days, as these mesoscale convective systems just kind of be pumping in the same areas, going up and over the ridge. As the ridge is locked to your south, that puts the storm placement training along this line, diving east southeastward. So as we head into later on this week, so there is a little bit of a cool down, like I mentioned, coming in for the upper Midwest. These areas that are experiencing fairly nicer conditions now are actually going to take a little bit of a tick downward over the next couple of days, with some cooler pockets aloft. So, but further south, again, you've got zonal flow that's coming directly off the Pacific, and that's definitely a warm flow of air, but there's going to be a sharp gradient and a temperature contrast, where you've got, of course, widespread heat advisories across the portions of the south, but fairly comfortable conditions once you swing northbound into the Central Plains, getting into the portions of the upper Midwest. But you can definitely see where the zonal flow is. It's almost like you can draw a line, across from west to east, as this more or less zonal flow is just more, kind of screaming across the country. But take you out in the tropics, so there isn't like anything organized right now, but a lot of people take their vacations down there in the Caribbean. So if you are heading down to the Caribbean, we are seeing an abundance amount of moisture within this atmosphere, and so it doesn't take much as you bubble up in the heat of the afternoon to produce these tropical type downpours. And I think that's exactly what you're going to find in the coming days across portions of Jamaica, back into the Cayman Islands. You got plans down in the Yucatan region into Cozumel. Those areas could see, kind of daily tropical rain showers within these regions. And it's a compounding effect. It'll add up over time. So, over time, over the next 7 to 10 days, we're going to be seeing some, pretty heavy rain amounts over the next 7 to 10 days across these regions, as I mentioned. So if you do have plans down there, if you are going to be vacationing, if you happen to live down here in these regions, just kind of be on a high alert, especially as you get into the afternoon time frame, as the atmosphere will probably turn over and produce those tropical type downpours, then kind of clear out and then reset itself for the next day. But as far as on the tropical front, there's really nothing technically to be concerned about for the next 7 to 10 days. If we look at some of the ensemble guidance, this is a pretty active wave that's coming off the coast of Africa. And if we look at, over the next 10 days from the European ensembles, there's a couple ensemble members out of 50, only a couple, not many at all, showing some sort of tropical type development, trying to take advantage of that abundant amount of precipitation down in these regions. So it's always something as we get deeper into hurricane season, as we look closer into the Caribbean for active tropical development. But definitely nothing to be concerned about over the next at least 7 to 10 days. So going forward, heading into next week. So going into next week, by the weekend, we do, like I mentioned, we've got that pretty significant trough that's going to be a backdoor trough that's going to be sneaking further south. So as the high moves back westward, just like what we saw last weekend, going to be really locked over Las Vegas, going to be locked over Phoenix again, locked over Arizona. That puts these weaker fronts back into play, pushes back into Oklahoma, pushes back into Arkansas, pushes back into East Texas. These areas see a slight cool down and increased rain probabilities as we head into the weekend. And that's exactly what's going to happen by the time we head into Saturday, going into Sunday time frame. You have these little weak cool fronts that come down, maybe squeeze out any precipitation along with it. You got slightly cooler air, definitely a welcome sight when you got repeated days of triple digit heat. Anything lower than 100 this time of year is also a welcome sight. But that also brings rain opportunities along these regions. So if you live along the I-20 corridor, along the I-30 corridor, you could be seeing some afternoon showers and thunderstorms along this weak front as we get into Saturday time frame. So you can see the temperature difference. It's a pretty big difference from the 106 and the 108 you're going to be getting in Dallas today. By the time you head into Saturday, you're down to 94. So that's, well, actually technically below average. So these areas are going to be in the, upper 90s, if not low 100s. Down across the southeast are going to be in the upper 80s, right? So that's definitely a cool down, even though it's a quick shot, this time of year, but it's definitely a welcome reprieve of any hope, because we're in the dog days of summer right now. And so this is the most brutal and the most intense heat that you would typically see, this time of year. But the trough is a pretty big deal. I mean, we've got a cooler shot of air across a good part of the upper Midwest, and that sneaks in with that backdoor trough and sneaks into the southeast and filters as far south as probably the I-30 corridor before it kind of stalls out and then retreats back further north going into the next week with a warm front. But the ridge of high pressure is going to be building across the west, right? So it's going to be originating along the west. So as it comes back next week, it's going to be lifting further north. So it all ends on Sunday with that cool down, probably stalling somewhere around the I-20, I-30 corridor. And that's exactly where it's going to be squeezing out these rain shower probabilities as we head into the afternoon time frame. And then going into Monday, it's going to be retreating back northward again. So you can actually see by the time we head into Tuesday, the 25th, going into early next week, we've got that ridge coming back, right? So the ridge, this time when it comes back, it's going to be lifting a little bit further northward, heading into the Central Plains. So you're going to be starting to see back into portions of Nebraska, getting into South Dakota, eventually probably getting into Iowa, likely going to be your hottest temperatures of the season heading into next week, with that ridge of high pressure really coming back into play. And when it does, it's going to expand further. But instead of expanding back further into Texas and into the southeast this time, it's actually going to be expanding northward and more or less northeastward. So that puts more into the Central Plains into play, and likely portions of Illinois into Indiana, getting into your portions of Wisconsin, getting into your hottest temperatures of the year. But what that would actually allow to happen is the possibility of some sort of hints of the monsoon coming back for parts of the desert Southwest, where they basically have had the monsoon has essentially been non-existent. I do feel by the time, it's going to be a while, it's still going to be probably 7 to 10 days, but by the time we head into day 10, especially with that ridge sneaking more into play across the Central Plains regions, that would allow a little bit more of a monsoonal flow into the desert Southwest, and actually it might put an end to the Phoenix streak by then, and might bring monsoonal flow back in the picture, and obviously much needed rain in for the desert Southwest. But it's something I would just probably keep an eye on, but it might not be until another 7-10 days out. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to like the video and also hit the share button, and definitely subscribe to my channel, and catch my next update where I protect you before and after the storm.